All right, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Chris Latham. Welcome to Game Music Composition. My name is Chris Latham. I'll be hanging out with you this month. I am the course director for the class, and we have lots of things to get into this afternoon. We'll be talking about the class as a whole, what you can expect from the class and the assignments. What we expect from you on with the submissions of everything and the delivery of the projects, and we'll describe the different assignments and kind of the flow of the month and of the classes as we go from week to week. We will then kind of later on get into a much more detailed discussion of the assignments for week one. So one of the big purposes of this class is to really introduce you to this side of the industry, of the music industry, of the entertainment industry. As you've been progressing along through the degree program, you have been applying your skills in a variety of different facets of the industry in different classes. You went through a songwriting class. You talked about music for jingles and commercial work. You talked about music for film and television and music with a moving image or picture. And now we talk about and apply your skills at creating creating the soundtrack or all of the music for a video game project. So we will talk about the process that's involved. We'll talk about the skills that are kind of provided by a game composer working on a game project. We will talk about how you find clients, how you work with clients, how do you find and determine how much music you need, what type of music you need, what is the instrumentation, how are you going to create and build a soundtrack to match the overall aesthetic and direction of the game. We will take all of the skills that you've worked on in all of your previous classes and apply it to music for a game. We'll talk about what is the same in the production of music for a game. We will talk about what is unique and different, certainly because the creation of the music, the process of creating the music is still very much the same as it is in any other media or any other format. It is still music composition. It is still music production. It is still understanding your instruments and the theory behind it and the aspects of the composition. It's understanding the technical tools, your DAW, it's still microphones and recording and instruments and plugins and synths and DAWs, all of the tools that are involved in all of that. So the creation of the music is very much the same. It just so happens to be applied to a game project. But we will also talk about once you have the wave file, once you've actually created or recorded or composed the music, how do you apply that to a game? How do you take a wave file and do something to it to actually get it working in the game so that when somebody has a controller in their hand or mouse and keyboard, they're playing the game, they click a button, it plays the piece of music or it plays the sound or does the action that is expected at that particular time. So we will talk about the technical aspects. We will talk about the creative aspects. How do you start from nothing and build a game soundtrack? How do you determine what music you need? How much music do you need? Where does it all go? And so we'll kind of dive into all of the different aspects of creation of music for games. We'll talk about the linear aspect versus non-linear aspect of your music for games. Most music that you've ever listened to or recorded or ever worked with is in a linear format. Most music in general is in a linear format, meaning that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. There is a definite progression of the music. You have structure to your music. We use tempo and bars and beats. We use verses and choruses and part A and part B and intros and outros and all of these structural aspects of our music to create the constant progression of that music over time. You use bars and beats and tempo. You use time code or minutes and seconds in the constant progression of that music. We will talk, however, or contrast the fact that in a game, you are not necessarily sure how long anything is going to play, how long anything is going to take, how long of a piece of music you need for a particular part of a game, or at least you know general boundaries and the overall guidelines, but there's not a specific piece of music that is going to play well. A lot of the music for a game needs to be able to adjust and change according to how somebody plays through the game. So some people will run through it as fast as possible, blazing through the game. They know every secret, they know every how to defeat every single enemy, and they're going so quickly through the game that they might even skip over different sections or blast through different parts that are just not in the way to the finish line or whatever. There are other folks that are going to be going around in circles in your game, knocking into walls, trying to find the next doorway that they need to go through, the next plot point in the story that they need to hit, or defeat the next enemy or bad guy. And they're hearing your same piece of music playing over and over and over again. So we have to have a soundtrack that can adjust and change dependent on how quickly or slowly or how long it takes for somebody to get somewhere or do a particular action or beat a certain thing in the game, a character or a bad guy or a level or something like that. So when you watch a movie, you watch a 2-hour long movie, you stream it online, or you put a DVD in your DVD player, watch it in a movie theater. There is a 2-hour long audio file for your 2-hour long movie that is either or both in stereo or 5.1 that plays back exactly the same way every single time as they were creating that soundtrack, the music, the dialogue, the sound effects. They used time code and rewound back every single time and made the mix perfect for the person who listens to it in the movie theater and who listens to it at home, and creates the one perfect mix that everybody hears. But in a game, people can play games for a pretty long period of time. It's not just necessarily a 2-hour long story. You can bring out a phone and play games for a few minutes. You can pick up a controller and play a game for a few hours. People get lost in games for days or weeks or months on end. Games can easily have over 10 or 20 or 50 or even 100 hours worth of content. Then if you get into like online and multiplayer games, they often just don't really ever end. They just have new content that is developed for it. And so in a 100-hour long game, that does not mean that there is a 100-hour long audio file sitting on the game disc somewhere, playing from beginning to end in the exact same way for everybody that plays through the game. So the music doesn't exist in one long wave file or one long file that plays from beginning to end. It exists in lots of little chunks, individual wave files that either loop or play through one time and transition and change and shuffle and rearrange in different orders according to whatever is happening on screen. If you have the fastest time or the highest score, or you have low health, or time is running out, or there's a whole bunch of enemies all around, you're about to be defeated, or you're about to win the game or win the match. All of these things can drive different changes to the music, to the point where the player shouldn't even be aware. They should kind of not even be aware of the effect of the, well, sometimes it needs to be direct, but for the most part, the changes that are happening in the background are reacting to the actions that the player is doing in the game or on screen. So we'll talk about the interactive nature of music. The fact that somebody has a controller in their hand and is playing a game, they have some control over the music, or often they have a lot of control over the music, but they may or may not be aware of it. It might be a music game, it might be a singing game or a dancing game, and music is an integral part of it. Or else it's like a lot of other games out there, action games, adventure games, racing games, mobile games, multiplayer games, and they have different uses for the music, and often the soundtrack is changing invisibly in the background, reacting to whatever's happening on screen. So we'll talk about the interactive nature of music. We will talk about the nonlinear nature of music, where it is not the same thing every single time. Everybody who plays the game should have a different experience in the music. It's either going to be just a little bit different, or it's going to be vastly different for everybody who plays. Might have a very big and very different experience from anybody else who plays the game. And we will also talk about how do you create music for a game or a story where you don't ultimately have control over the final result of the music. You have a lot of control. It is you know all of the possibilities. You know you're part of the game team, the developers that are making it. You know what's possible. You know all of the choices or all the different options that might happen, but you don't necessarily know which option a player might take, or how long or when they're going to make any of those decisions. So we'll talk about how do you make music or create a game soundtrack when you don't ultimately have control over the final result. And it has to be able to change and morph and adjust to react and make a unique experience for every person who ends up playing the game. So we will talk about the creative side. We'll talk about the technical side. We'll talk about what is unique to games. Yeah, so that's in the big picture. Generally, what we're trying to do this month. Specifically through the classes, we have our Tuesday and Thursday sessions. This Tuesday is a little bit different than the rest of the sessions because it's all of the intro material. It's getting started on the projects. You haven't actually done any of the projects yet. So everything's going to be due Sunday this week. Hopefully you've already accessed FSO to get access to the assignments and download and start checking them out. And so, but the following Tuesday and every Tuesday after that, we'll start out with peer review. Each week you will have a composition in a particular style, and the following Tuesday, or the first session of the week, we will do peer review for everybody who submits for that. You have an optional assignment on FSO. Each week it's highly encouraged that everybody that can participates and submits their stuff, and then we can talk about it in class. If you're here in the live class, you submit your work, we can open up the microphone and talk about it, and you can ask questions, and we can go back and forth on the overall setup of your composition. But for everybody else, obviously I do the archive here, archiving all of these sessions, and we'll post them up as announcements on FSO the following day. So you can get kind of a video feedback of your submission. And it helps, even if you don't submit for the optional peer review, It helps everybody else because you see everybody else's versions, right? You'll get individualized feedback for your submission, but you also get to see everybody else's or everybody that submits. So the more people that we have that participate, the more variations we can see and more stuff we can talk about. So that's how we start out the rest of our Tuesday sessions. The second half, including this session, we'll talk about the new week's assignments. So after I go through the intro stuff, I'll get into your first assignments here for week 1. And then each of the following Tuesdays, we'll talk about week 2, 3, and 4. The Thursday sessions are open sessions for come armed with questions. We'll talk about different aspects of, we'll take a listen to your projects. If you have any questions or clarifications that you need, please let me know. And we can talk about any aspects of the projects or of the class or the industry or whatever you're interested in. Okay, so that is our sessions Tuesday and Thursday. All of your assignments are due on Sunday. We'll talk about them on the following Tuesday. And yeah, that's most of the overview stuff I want to start out with. Myself, again, my name is Chris Latham. I'm the course director of the class. You can reach me with the following information. Email is probably the best way of getting in contact with me. I can certainly respond to any of your questions about the class. The phone number, I am, when I am on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm teaching online. I'm away from my desk phone. I also teach on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I'm in the classroom and I might be away from my desk phone at certain times. So, but if you call and leave a voicemail, or you can call and catch me, or if you do leave a voicemail, please send me an email also. So wherever I am, I can respond a little bit more easily and directly from there. Beyond Full Sail, I have a game audio contract group called Engine Audio, where we work on a number of different projects. So I guess my history with Full Sail, I've been with Full Sail for about 15 years now. Before Full Sail, I was working in studios and on different production projects, like mostly advertising, radio and television stuff, on location, field recording, voiceovers, music, sound effects, all of that sort of stuff. I started with Full Sail over in the recording arts program and worked in the studios over there. Have always had a passion for games and quickly kind of applied my interest in audio into games as game and technology opened up. You could start getting into games and tearing them all apart and getting access to their inner workings. And so I started working on some independent projects and eventually got connected with EA Sports, which is here in Orlando. I've worked with them on a couple over the different years or seasons on a couple of their different projects, and also have worked on a multiplayer online sharks and divers game called Depth, or still continue to work on all that. So basically I took all of my knowledge and interest in all different facets of music and audio and started applying them over to games. So whatever you're interested in discussing, certainly the class or beyond the class, different aspects of hardware or software or composition or technology or certainly games or any of that stuff, please let me know. 2 quick disclaimers. Starting out with the first one here, you don't actually have to be any good at video games to be successful in this class. Your skills at actually playing video games is certainly not required. It is not required by any means to get the highest score or the fastest time, or can play the games with any sort of skill. The skills that are required, however, are the skills that you've been gaining through all of the different classes up to this point. Your skills in music composition and music production and understanding the tools and technology and basically being able to take a client's intentions with a project, with a game project, and apply, create and generate music for that. Be able to render that into a usable music soundtrack. So I certainly know that folks coming through this class have a wide variety of experience with games. There are those that eat, live, and breathe games, that are up on all the newest and latest games, up on the newest technology, play all sorts of games, know about the game developers and the game hardware and software technology and developers. And I can certainly nerd out with you all day long, and I am one of those people that plays games and loves audio and loves music and can talk all day long about games. But I also understand that there are folks that come through the class that don't play games, haven't been playing games since they were throwing quarters into Pac-Man, or were haven't playing Minesweeper, or whatever your experience with games is, however, is not required or important for your success in this class. We'll talk about the projects and what is required from the compositional and music standpoint overall. So definitely want to put that out there early on. The other one is you don't need to have actual coding or programming skills to be successful as a music composer in games. One of very early questions that we get at Q&A sessions, or whenever we have somebody from the industry come through and talk with our students, there's a Q&A session and somebody inevitably comes up to the microphone and says, I understand audio. I'm either in the music production program or the recording arts program. I know music, I know audio. I don't know how to program or code. Can I still work in games? And the answer is always a resounding yes, because your skills that are required and are important to the game team is your ability to create and compose the music. That is certainly the aspect that they do not understand, or that they cannot do themselves, and so they hire you for that purpose, for you to create the music. Just as much as you can't code or program, they can't write a note worth of music for their game, and so it's a very good scenario for both sides. There's a technical side, there's a creative side, and they work together to get the job done. Of course, any skills that you have in the technical side, if you can code, if you can program, that just makes it all the there's a kind of a technical road, what am I saying? Technical roadblock that some people encounter of getting started and understanding the technology. If you just have general computer skills and understand the technology behind games, then you can at least communicate. Certainly wouldn't be expected to open up a text document, start pounding away at the keyboard, and come up with code. But understanding the technology, understanding the computer, understanding the tools that are used and involved will certainly help the communication and being able to express your intention with the music and actually have it do that in the technology. So being able to bridge those gaps back and forth while not being able to directly code or program. All right, the next one here is goals of the class. So what is our purpose in the class? What are we focused on? Of course, number one would be write music. Kind of the focus in all of your classes, especially through the later classes in the degree program. You've learned your different skill sets in composition and theory and production of music. So let's apply it to different formats, different media. And so we just so happen are applying it to the medium of games. So we give you music to write. We give you projects to work on. That's the main thing to focus on. You have 2 games this month, fully working Mac games with that at the end will have your custom music and sounds working in the game. They are built in the Unity game engine. We'll talk about game engines when we talk about the technology. And we will discuss how your music works in the game, the creative aspects of it, and give you certainly the opportunity to write music in different styles and different like needs and requirements for the games. So, 2 working games, 2 Mac games that were built in the Unity game engine that we will also be using Wise, which is game audio software. You need to have a working version of Wise installed. We'll talk about that in week 3. And we will have kind of these projects set up so that you can go through the process and understand what set of skills and what set of tools a music composer uses while working on games. Our next goal, I have a very important concept in this class, which is known as game research. Game research means you should be playing video games. And you should be paying attention to games. You should be playing games to analyze what's going on with the sound and the music. This is certainly not the most difficult task or difficult aspect of your homework that you've ever been tasked with. But if you have the possibility to play games, or you already play games, then you should be playing more video games and paying attention to the music and the sound, paying attention to how the music changes, what happens to the music, why did it change there, what did it change to, how does the music reflect the action in the game and changing the different objectives and storylines in the game, and understanding how the music and sound kind of work together. So just in the same way that if you are interested in the music industry, you should be listening to tons of music, paying attention to artists and engineers and record labels, production companies, recording studios, the technology, the songwriters, producers, everybody involved in the process. If you're you're listening to tons of different genres, paying attention to different styles of music, because clients speak in terms of previous projects or previous albums. They'll talk about a different drum kit or kick drum sound or a specific guitar tone or vocal styling or songwriting technique, and they'll refer to other albums, either in a time or a place or a genre or a culture or whatever it is. Same thing with film. If you're interested in getting in the film industry, you should be watching tons of movies, paying attention to the music, paying attention to reading scores, paying attention to the composer, paying attention to the production company, the director, the producer, watching any behind-the-scenes information you can get your hands on, and just absorbing as much information about the industry as you can, because clients speak in terms of previous films and previous projects. It just so happens that if you're interested in the game industry, you should be playing tons of video games. You should be playing games and paying attention to the games, paying attention to the music and sound effects, and creating a common language that you could share with your client. So that if they ask you if you've played a certain game or read a particular piece of literature or watched a movie or listened to an album, that you have a solid repertoire or you're just at least constantly chasing it, because it's infinite. There's tons of all of that media, so that you can understand the language of your client. Or actually, more realistically, kind of help your client to create that language, because a lot of folks, when it's just like a lot of art in general, a lot of folks know what they want when they see it, but they can't tell you ahead of time, right? They can't describe it, but boy, when they see it, they can tell you if they like it or not. So Our final goal here is certainly to learn something in all of this. With all of the music and video games, there still is a lot of knowledge to be had in all of this. There's all of the creative aspects, there's the technical aspects. It's not solely the composition and the creation of the music. That is half of the equation. The other half is how it actually works and plays back in the game. Could have amazing compositions that make absolutely no sense when they play back in the game. So we'll talk about the creative aspects, the technical aspects, the business aspects. How do you find clients and find projects and maintain those clients and understand and create exactly what they need. All right, let's go to FSO. I just want to, we'll start getting into the assignments and the class as a whole. Do it this way. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. That. And Full Sail. Hold on. Let's see. Almost there. There we go. All right. So, just a quick overview of what you'll find on FSO. Introduction section. If you've gone this far into the program, you've certainly seen this a number of times, but it's welcome letter, contact info, support information, professionalism policy, late policy. You should certainly make yourself familiar with all of the policies of the class, but I'm sure it is stuff you're quite familiar with. So, getting into week 1 here, we have, let's go here. Your main project for this week will be your 2D platformer game composition. This is your first game, and this is what I'll be talking about here in a moment. And make sure to download everything for this assignment. You will get a copy of the game. You will get a video of the game also, so you don't always have to open up the game and play it. You can just check it out real quick. You'll also get a PDF that describes most of the assignment, and I will get into this in a whole lot more detail here in just a bit. Session preparation is a series of videos that discuss the assignment in a bit more detail. We'll give a kind of an overview of how you might break down a session and kind of start from nothing and set it up and go through all of the steps until you get everything set up and bounce it all out. Along with the game composition, you will be doing the sound design for 2D platformer. After we discuss the composition, I will do an overview of the sound design also. And so by the end of this week, you will have created all of the music and all of the sound effects for your first game. And then in week 3, we will start by using Wise to implement your music and your sound effects into the game. So here is your optional feedback and peer review. This is where once you have completed your game composition, you can submit it for feedback and peer review. We will load it up live in the class and take a listen to it. We can talk all about it. We can answer any questions. Certainly it's the best way to discuss the project overall. Well, if you're here in the live class, then you've already found the Tuesday and Thursday virtual class link. We have that each week. We also have links to the different slide sessions. And then we also have suggested reading and viewing. There is a series of videos and also some chapters from your textbook. I think I have a slide here in a bit, but there is a textbook available for this month. You should be getting a copy if not already. And there is nothing in the book that is testable information that is you won't find anywhere else in the class. It really is just more supplemental information for the topics that we discuss. But suggested chapters and videos to check out in discussing the topics that we touch on each week. So that's week one. Then after week one, you will finish your first composition. You will get into your second composition, known as Angry Bots. It's a completely new game, needs a new soundtrack, new instrumentation, new approach to the music overall. But the process is very much the same. You'll start out by creating the music for the game. There is a session preparation assignment, which is a list of a series of videos available discussing that project. You will be creating the sound design for that game. There's an optional feedback and peer review to submit your work so far, and links to the virtual class and the suggested reading. In week three, we get into whys. So you will have created the music, you will have created the sound effects. So now we use whys to actually set up and implement your music and sound effects to work in the game. So we'll talk about the technology, we'll talk about the tool, how to set it all up, and how it is actually used with the game. And then week four kind of lightens up a bit. No brand new composition, and you will be doing a final video capture so that you can show off your music working in the game, and you will also deliver the final version of your game project. This will be delivering your video capture, delivering different aspects of the project. So we'll talk about those as they come. So that is the summary of FSO. If you have any questions as we go through and want to discuss any aspect of the assignments, please let me know. As mentioned, you do have a textbook, Composer's Guide to Game Music by Winifred Phillips. Is an excellent text discussing more of the creative and business aspects of the industry and the process of creating music. It doesn't really talk about the technology because the technology quickly changes. But it is a lot of game audio textbooks have just one chapter on music and other chapters on other aspects of the process. This one really focuses on the music side of things and the business aspects of a composer working on a game project. All right, let's get into a discussion of the games. Your first game project, which is known as 2D Platformer. Let me go ahead and load up a few things. So when you go on FSO and you download the materials, all of the downloads for the assignment, you get a copy of a video, which is a video of the game. You get a copy of the game itself, and you also get this PDF somewhere. A PDF description of the project, how it is set up, and how you will need to format and bounce your audio files, how they're going to work when played back in the game. So, well, come on, PDF. There you go. All right, so I'm going to play this video, which I'll play a video of the game, and then discuss how the music's going to work and how you'll set all this stuff up. But first, I'm going to make sure you can hear that, because I don't think you can hear that. Let's try that.
Ow! Bring it on! Keep it classy. I say, old bean. Huh. Huh. Keep it classy. Bring it on. Huh. Bombs away. Keep it classy. I say, old bean. Bring it on. Huh. Keep it classy. Huh. I say, old bean. Bring it on. I say, old bean. Bring it on. Keep it classy. Oh. Ow, 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 ow. I say, old bean.
All right, so let me get myself set up here. All right, so let's do this. There we go.
Ow. Bring it on.
All right, so as you can see, the game is kind of a lighthearted concept overall. You are a bean with a bazooka and a monocle and a top hat, and you have these little red and green aliens coming to invade. You can tell this is set in London. You can tell because this is London Bridge. It has fallen down. There's Big Ben over here. There is the London Eye, and for some reason, you are the only being that can save humanity. Maybe you're a human being, and these aliens come in onslaughts to attack, and you will defend and defeat these enemies. So, kind of ridiculous concept, kind of wacky and silly, and like I said, lighthearted overall. The music can certainly reflect that, and the music needs to be upbeat to keep the pacing of the game moving forward. Nothing too slow or laid back. The probably want a little bit of danger or action with these the enemies attacking. Nothing too much where you're like, I mean, certainly it's okay to be in a major key and have it, like I said, a lighthearted nature. But you don't want anything to be too slow or laid back. You're like, hey, I don't really care. These aliens are attacking. Let's see, the instrumentation. I leave the instrumentation up to you. In this first project, the genre, the instrumentation, the overall musical approach, whatever you feel is most appropriate, whatever you're most comfortable with. I'm really interested in the process of getting your music working in the game with the sound effects and setting up the music and formatting it correctly. But there are certainly some elements. You need to have like drums, bass, harmony, melody. You need to have some percussion of some sort or drum pattern, bass line and harmony, harmonic progression, chord progression to support certainly the melody. And the melody is going to be the strongest element and have the most variation and development through the game. Hold on just a sec. Let's set this up to loop. So I don't have to play it back every single time. Along with this assignment, where'd it go? You get the PDF. Actually, let me turn this all the way down. Turn it down. Okay. So you get a copy of this PDF, which describes the assignment in a lot of detail. A lot of the project overview is the stuff that will be discussing now. Game overview. The game is called 2D Platformer. That is because it is a 2D platform game. It is 2D because all you can do is move left and right and jump up and down. You cannot go into the game or into the image. It is a platform game because you are running and jumping between different platforms, and often you're shooting or jumping on the head or punching an enemy or something like that. And I have here 2D platformer games have a long pedigree in the games industry. Classics like Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong, and Metroid were 2D platformer games to modern varieties like Limbo, Braid, and Jetpack Joyride. 2D platformer games have been, or just platformer games, have been around for quite a long time and still have lots of different variations in the industry. And it's a good kind of place to start because it's a more of a simple, straightforward approach to the kind of the soundtrack and the composition. Musical style, again, the genre, the instrumentation, those sorts of things I'll leave up to you. There are a couple of things that you can pull from here. Like I said, it is set in London, so you could maybe have a British influence. There's also the sci-fi alien invasion kind of theme that you could work with. However, though, it's probably not too intimidating and too dark or depressing. It's a lot more maybe lighthearted, campy, maybe like 50s sci-fi film kind of feel to it. I have a line here: Monty Python meets Mars Attacks, Benny Hill versus the Body Snatchers. So it could be a little bit of campy British comedy. It could be a little bit of campy 50s sci-fi, or it doesn't have to be either of those. Just different references you could pull from. Playing the game hopefully should be relatively straightforward. You can use the arrow keys to go left and right, spacebar to jump, left click on the trackpad or the mouse to fire the weapon, right click to drop bombs. There's little parachutes that come down and bombs pop up. And so hopefully that would be pretty straightforward to play. Instrumentation, I mentioned that the instrumentation need to have drums, bass, harmony, melody. So let's talk about how the music will be set up and how it will kind of change and progress. So one of the more important parts of this document is the asset list. And the asset list describes the 9 WAV files that you will submit for this, that you will turn in for this project. And like I said, the music for the game does not exist as one file. It exists in several files that switch and change according to whatever needs to happen in the game. So we have 3 intros, 3 main loops, and 3 endings. We have a total of 9 files, but they're broken into 3 different categories. The intro, this is set up and kind of works with a very common concept in music for games, which is the idea of intro, loop, ending, or start, loop, stop, where there is some sort of intro, there is a main loop that will go around consistently for as long as it needs to, or it might randomize between multiple loops during that time, and eventually something happens and the music will end. There will be a resolution so that it returns to silence, so it can pick back up at the intro again, maybe, and randomly choose a different intro, a different main loop, and a different ending each time. So let's talk about how this works in the game. First off, I mentioned the game is created using the Unity game engine. That's what this logo is here at the very beginning. And it is the main tool, or one of the most popular tools that people use to make games, especially if you've played a lot of mobile games, some console and PC games. all use the Unity game engine. So it's quite a popular tool, kind of like saying Logic or Pro Tools or your particular DAW. And this game, 2D platformer, is a demo project that they release with their tools that allow everybody to tear it all apart and change different aspects of how they work. So when the game starts, your character kind of falls down and falls. Oops, what happened there? Falls down and just kind of lands on the platform. At this point, the music starts, and the game is going to randomly choose one of the 3 intros. The game knows nothing about your music. It doesn't know the tempo or the time signature, but as long as you keep everything at the same tempo, then the music should transition and seamlessly transition from one cue to the next in the background. So you have 3 intros. Those 3 intros are each 2 bars long. Everything is going to be 16-bit 44:1 stereo files, and the intros do not loop. So the game will choose randomly one of these 3 intros. It can be any tempo you want, and typically a faster tempo overall will maintain the energy in the game. So it randomly chooses intro 3, and it plays that for 2 bars. At some point, the 2 bars is over. The game then is going to randomly choose one of the main loops. Now, it's important to know that intro 1 does not always go to main loop 1, which does not always go to ending 1. These can play in any sort of random order. So intro 1 can go to main loop 3, which could go to ending 2. Or any particular order. So it plays through intro 1, then it chooses, let's say it chooses main loop 3. Now, assuming that you have written your music at the same tempo for all of these WAV files or all these cues, your intros are 2 bars long, then they should seamlessly transition with no gaps, no fades, no pops or clicks, nothing except for to seamlessly transition from one of these intros into the main loops. So it'll choose main loop 3, and it'll play through main loop 3 randomly for 8 bars. And then once main loop 3 is over, then it will randomly choose another one. It'll choose main loop 1, then it'll play that for 8 bars. Then it'll choose main loop 2, then it'll choose main loop 1 again. Then it'll choose main loop 3 4 times in a row. Then it'll choose 2, then it'll choose 1, 3, and it could be just in any sort of order, also with repetitions. And so you need to make sure that if each of these main loops are 8 bars long, they're at the same tempo, then they will switch seamlessly in the background, and it will feel like one consistent piece of music. So you also need similar instrumentation across all of the files. It needs to feel like the same band playing the same song all the way through. It's just separated out into these individual variations. You need to be at the same tempo, or rhythmically it'll just throw itself all over the place as it switches from one thing to the next. It needs to be in the same key, or else it's going to clash or be very jarring as it jumps from one to the next. So there's a lot that's going to be the same about all 9 of these files. Same key, same tempo, same time signature. They're all, well, at least in their groups. The intros are 2 bars, the main loops are 8 bars, the endings are 2 bars. So what's unique and different is going to be the composition. You need to have change and variation in each one of the cues. The drums change a little bit. The chord progression changes slightly. Bass line changes a bit. But most importantly, the lead melody is going to change and develop over the course of each one of these cues. You want to watch out for repetition. You do not want to repeat the same musical idea over and over again in a particular 8-bar cue. With 3 8-bar cues, it's going to be repetitive enough already. So you don't want to make it even more repetitive by repeating the same idea over and over again. A lot of times I will hear a 4-bar phrase repeated twice in an 8-bar loop, or a 2-bar phrase repeated 4 times, or at worst, or maybe not at worst, but even worse, a 1-bar phrase repeated 8 times. And then it really doesn't change in variation 2 or 3, and it's basically the same all the way through. So use the full 8 bars to develop your melodic idea. You can change lead instruments through the composition, set up the instrumentation however you need. So that is the intros and the main loops. The last one is the endings. How does the game know when the game is over, and how does it know when to finish and resolve the music? And the answer to that is the health. You may or may not have noticed that there is a health bar over the character, and when health runs out, which is a little bit later on here, you can see there are these parachutes that kind of bring more health too, that come down. But when you run out of health entirely, let's see here, right about there, the character falls into the sludge below, loses the gun, or the bazooka, loses the hat. You basically lose control of the game. So when your health runs out, your health hits 0, then it's going to immediately cut off the main loop. Whatever was playing, you are not guaranteed where you're going to be, if it's going to be end time, but it won't be that far off, and it will immediately hard cut from one to the next, which works in this instance because everything else, you lost the game, you lost control, the music switches, it resolves down. You have 2 bars. It needs to resolve to silence, resolve to a strong finish. Everything hits one last note or chord. The drums hit the last hit, and the cymbal crash. Everything has a little time to decay and fade to silence, and that gives it time to start all over again once the game starts back up. Then it will go into the intros, play that for 2 bars. Then all the time during gameplay, it's randomizing between these 3 main loops until you run out of health, and it plays one of the 3 ending cues. So that's the basics of how the game and the music will trigger and play back in during gameplay. I do have some examples. I'm not just going to talk the entire time. Where are my examples? Let's start. Yeah. All right, I'll play a couple of these, and then I'll show a composition session. These are the final bounces. Then I'll show like an actual session with the MIDI and the setup. Then I will talk about the sound design, and yeah, that should wrap everything up. All right, so each track is a student submission. There are 9 files on each track. There are this column over here. These are all the main loops. Each student has 3 main loops, and they're 8 bars. Notice that they go all the way to the edges so that they don't clip, they don't pop, or there's no gaps or fades. They are a consistent tempo all the way across, also a consistent mix. And we're really looking for the development of the melody and the kind of the development of the changes from one to the next, so that it doesn't get stale as as best as possible. Then you have 3 intros. The intros are meant to build up to the main loops. They typically start at a lower intensity and will rise towards the beginnings of these main loops. Wherever you begin on the main loops, that is where you have to aim for it to end in the intros. You might even be well served to to start on the tonic of each one of your main loops, so that you always have this anchor point, so that you know where you're going back to. So you can wander off anywhere through the main loop, and you always know you're going to resolve back to the tonic. Same thing with the intros. If you know you're headed towards the tonic, maybe you can hang on a 4 or 5 chord or some suspension and resolve to that will resolve to the tonic. Intros should build anticipation. Intros and the endings should use all of the same instruments as the main loops, so that it doesn't feel like any particular musician or instrument just kind of left the mix. Using drums, bass, harmony, and melody, you still need to have those elements in the intros and the endings. The endings are going to end. They are going to resolve. They are going to reach silence. These are good examples because they eventually hit silence. These are not very good examples right here. These also get cut off. These ones here. So watch out for the decay in the end or the tail of this file or the instrument or the sound. You do not want the audio file to just drastically cut off the file. You want to fade it or let it decay out to silence. You can do some other fun things compositionally with the ending cues. Remember, in the endings, you have just lost the game. You just died. Your character's going to respawn, start over again. And you can have more drastic changes in the ending cues, where the intros and main loops might all be in a major key. Maybe all the ending cues are in a minor key, or they end with a lot of dissonance to relay the fact that you just screwed up and you lost at least that round of the game. You have heard things with effects where everything just blasts into a whole bunch of reverb or delay, or the kind of pitch ramp effect, or the entire band just kind of falls apart, where everything's kind of grooving pretty solidly in the intros and the main loops, and then it just hits the endings and everything, just the drums go everywhere and the rest of the instruments just fall out of time, and it so you have a little bit more room to mess with the endings or make them more interesting or create more change. What was the other part of the ending cues? They need to end. You can have... the other aspect is the 2 bars. The assignment says that the music needs to end in 2 bars. And that is true for the music, but not necessarily the audio file. If you need a little bit of extra room so that it doesn't get cut off, if you need a little bit of extra room for instruments to decay, cymbal crashes to fade out, reverb tails to fade, you can use a little bit of extra time beyond the 2 bars in these ending cues. The music needs to end in 2 bars, but the audio file doesn't necessarily. The other side of that is you do not necessarily need to use the full 2 bars. It just needs to end by that point musically. So that means you could a place that common point to end that works very well is beat 1 of bar 2, so that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, and just kind of holds on that and eventually fades to silence. You don't always need to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4 cutoff. The other part of that is you shouldn't just end on 1. You shouldn't just go bum and just hit on beat 1 of bar 1, or else it'll feel like your entire mix kind of slammed into a brick wall and stopped very, very suddenly. So those are some ideas with the intros and main loops and endings. Let's go ahead and play this. Go over here. Alright, I think this should work. Let's try it. I'm going to start with the main loops. Alright, so each one of these are 8 bars. There's no gaps or any issue with the transition. It transitions seamlessly. There's slight change from one to the next. The melody changes, the percussion changes a little bit, progression changes a bit, and there's constant movement forward. So there's nothing to really interrupt the flow of the music, and it could kind of jump around into any order that it wants. Here are 3 intros. What happened there? Let's try that again. 3 intros. So you're going to want to watch out for things like this last cymbal crash. Things like that will get cut off by the end of the file. So you more than likely just don't want to put a cymbal crash there, or you would have to put the rest of the cymbal crash at the beginnings of each one of these files, which might make it either it's too much the same, or you're going to have to put the cymbal crash in all of the files. Over here, we have 3 endings. Same sort of thing. You want to watch out for the last cymbal crash to make sure that it does not get cut off by the end of the file. We'll try another one here. So, same sort of thing. We got some changes from one to the next. We got a solid lead line, lead melody, and we got strong percussion, strong harmony, with variations from one to the next. Here are 3 intros. One aspect that works pretty well for the intros is to subdivide the beat. So let's go back to the first one. To 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just kind of build up. Subdividing the rhythm till you reach the end there. Here are 3 endings. All right, and so they end. They have a strong ending, a final chord, and a final hit as a kind of period at the end of the sentence. I have a couple. I'll try one more here. This one's more electronic, and maybe sounds more like older video game. Well, this one actually more electronic and focuses on a strong melody. Here are 3 intros. Three endings. All right, and let's try one more. This one? What's this one? There's 3 main loops. Here's 3 intros. And 3 endings. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how these different cues are going to be set up and how to work with the different variations. Understand that the intro 1, 2, and 3 does not always go to main loop 1, 2, and 3, which doesn't always go to ending 1, 2, and 3. But should give you a solid direction to head with this assignment. So we talked about 2D platformer. The sound design, let's talk a bit about that. The sound effects for this game are relatively straightforward because a lot of them can be done with your voice, which I will explain here in just a moment. So when you download this assignment, you get a copy of the original sound effects that you hear in the game, and you get a PDF. And in this PDF, there is another asset list. And there's screenshots of each one of the sounds, list of what kind of a short description of each one of them, and the actual WAV files so that you can listen to them and check them out as reference. But just kind of quickly, I want to show you how you might set these up and just play through them. But what's going on? Let me jump down here. Hello, PDF. Wow. I don't need a slow tour of my PDF. It's just a PDF. There we go. Oh no, don't go too far. Oh boy. Oh, there it goes. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. I think I might have it. That was a little too much work for an asset list or for a PDF. Okay, so anyway, as it scrolls up and down, there are a total of 18 sound effects that you will be creating for this assignment. They are all 16-bit 44.1 stereo files. And to get started on this assignment, I would definitely suggest that you take the original sound effects and import them into a Logic session and use them as a reference for building your own sound effects. So I will do that now. So create a brand new Logic session, and in that Logic session, we're going to create one new audio track. I'm going to get rid of these random instrument tracks that are here. Okay, one new audio track, and with this assignment, you get a folder filled with the original WAV files. So take all of these WAV files and drag them into your one track. We want to place all the files on the one track. They're going to be in all sorts of crazy different sample rates. So just convert the files to whatever the project is, which is probably 44.1. So you have a list of all of the WAV files, right? I'm going to name this maybe originals. Then you will create a series of audio tracks down below. Edit 1. 2, edit 3, oops, edit 3, edit 4, can't type. All right, and then you probably want to spend some time separating these out so you have a little room to bounce and they're not just like stacked on top of each other. And I'm not going to make you watch me do that entirely. But you kind of split these out so that you have some room to work. Hello. Right. And then, using the original waveforms and the original sounds as reference, you will create your own versions. The assignment, the PDF, links to Westar Music and freesound.org, which are both good resources for sounds. Westar Music is filled with the Sound Ideas Library, which is a professional sound effects library. And the freesound.org is a crowdsourced source, a crowdsource sound effects library. There is tons and tons of sounds there. There are a whole lot of very bad sounds on there, but there are also some very, very good sounds that you just kind of have to dig a little bit more. So, and then I'm going to completely cheat here, but you would create your own sound effects. And of course, you would not just copy these over and over again. That makes no sense. But eventually, you would have your own sound effects down here. And you would reference them against the original. Come on, I'm trying to copy it. There we go. You would reference them against the original. When you bounce, of course, you mute the originals track. You do not bounce the original into the file, but you use it as reference. You check what it sounds like. You see how long it is, how loud the file is, what the overall waveform or shape of it is. and you can get a sense of how the sounds are supposed to be set up. So definitely just import them in and go off and find a whole bunch of sounds, bring them in, edit them down, and bounce them out. So let's listen to these sounds. The other thing I said was a lot of the sounds can be done with your voice. So let's actually listen to the sounds, and I'll just give you a short description of each one. Starting with bomb boom. This might be a little bit loud because I don't really have audio control over this aspect, but here's the explosion. Maybe. Alright, that is when you drop the bomb in the game and it explodes. It's actually a 7-second long file. I think this is a ridiculously large explosion. But yours file doesn't necessarily need to be 7 seconds long, but it is a good, strong explosion sound. So use that. The bomb fuse. That is when when you drop the bombs, they don't immediately go off. They give you about a second to run away. That's the sound that you hear right before the bomb goes off. Bomb pickup. This is when the bombs come down as little parachute packages, and you pick those up, and you get access to 3 more bombs or something like that. So here's bomb pickup. That is a very game kind of centric abstract sound. It doesn't really sound like anything. It's kind of a synthy tone. It certainly doesn't sound like you picking up anything. So it needs to be more for feedback and kind of that sort of arcade tone. Well, I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but that's one way to go. Bomb set down.
Bombs away.
Bombs away. So it's a line of dialogue. Open up your microphone, record yourself saying bombs away. You don't have to do it in the accent. You don't even have to say bombs away. You could come up with your own line of dialogue. Just make sure it's in context, and please keep everything clean and family friendly. But have fun with it and enjoy and make it your own and make it unique. So the next one here...
Bombs away.
Oh, there's bombs away. The next one is enemy death. This is when you shoot the enemies. All right, so real short, just open up the microphone, do a couple of those sounds, record them, and edit them down. Here's the gunshot. One thing it is not is the sound of a bazooka. It doesn't sound like a rocket launcher. It doesn't sound like something taking off. It's a short, quick gunshot. And the reason for that is during gameplay, the player is going to be hitting the button very fast. And it's just going to be bop, 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 bop. And you don't want a very long sound to stack up and just play. You don't need a 3-second long sound somebody's going to hit 10 times in 3 seconds. So make it a short, strong, impactful sound. And it is one of the main sounds that is heard during gameplay. Here's health pickup. Right, another abstract kind of arcade sound. And the rest of these are dialogue. Jump 1, 2, and 3.
Huh. Huh. Huh.
Notice those are the jump up portion of it. They are not the land. Sometimes I get feet where it sounds like somebody just landed on the ground. But in the game, the jump's pretty big, so it plays during the jump up portion of it. Ouch 1, 2, and 3. This is when your character gets hurt or damaged.
Oh. Ow. Ow.
All right, a couple of simple one of those, just ooh, in the game. Taunt.
Keep it classy. Bring it on.
Taunt 1, 2, and 3.
I say, Bean. Bring it on. Keep it classy.
Keep it classy.
I say, old bean,
I say, old bean,
bring it on.
bring it on. So, 3 different taunts. You don't have to say keep it classy. You don't have to do it again in the British accent. You can make it your own, make it unique, keep it clean, keep it fun, but make it your own. And so a lot of these, most of these are done with your voice. So, and really simple, kind of short lines. Even the health pickups, what else? The health pickups, the bomb pickups, the bomb set down. Most of these sounds could be done with a line of dialogue. So, pretty straightforward. Either record your dialogue or layer up the sounds and bounce them out in the correct format, and it should be pretty straightforward to create your sound effects. All right. So your second game in week 2 is called Angry Bots, and just wanted to introduce it real quick. Of course, we'll talk about it a whole lot more in detail next week. We'll let that play. All right, so definitely a different type of game, known as a kind of a third-person shooter over the shoulder. You got a whole bunch of robot enemies. You are a mercenary trying to infiltrate this robot factory, and they're coming out to attack. So it requires a different style of music, a different approach to the music. We'll be talking about the difference between horizontal and vertical composition. So I just wanted to introduce that real quick and say that we'll be talking about it next week. So that should be enough from me this session this afternoon. I'll stick around for a few minutes. If you have any questions or if you're watching the archive, reach out and let me know if you have any questions on the assignments or the class in general. Here in the chat, is this lecture archive will be posted on FSO? Yes, it'll be posted the next day. I'll convert it and format it and get it up there, so it shows up as an announcement on FSO, so you'll be able to follow up with those at that time. Excellent. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, but we'll meet again on Thursday. Come armed with any questions that you might have about the projects. Download the game, play the game, check it out, start writing some ideas, send me anything if you want to listen to it, and we can go from there. All right, thank you very much, and I will see you again on Thursday.